Well, how's that for a blockbuster? Wednesday morning, before I've even had my coffee out here on the West Coast, the Buffalo Bills finalize a trade to send all pro receiver Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans. A mammoth deal, not really in terms of the compensation, but just when you talk about one of the best, one of the most well known wide receivers in the NFL going to one of the most exciting young teams in the league. I guess start with the compensation, which even knowing the contract Stephon Diggs is on, even knowing how hard it is to move a high priced player like that, still a little bit surprising to see the Bills not getting any compensation in this year's draft in the deal. The Bills receive Houston's second round pick in 2025. And on top of that, Buffalo also had to kick in a fifth round pick and a sixth round pick. One in this year's, the sixth rounder in this year's draft, and the fifth rounder in next year's draft, just to get the Texans to say, okay, that's what you talk about when you're moving these players with these massive cap hits. The Bills are taking a $31 million hit to move on from Stephon Diggs. The Texans just a second round pick a year from now. I guess I'm going to start with the Bills just because it's an end of an era type move in Buffalo. The Bills traded for Stephon Diggs way back at the beginning of Josh Allen's career. It was the move that helped unlock Allen as one of this league's premier quarterbacks. It turned the Bills offense into one of the most fun in the league. Obviously, the Bills, a perennial division champ during Diggs' time there. So many memorable moments in the playoffs, most of which did not go the Bills' way, unfortunately. And now it's hard not to think that this was a it's time to move on sort of decision, because Diggs, while he did have a little bit of a disappearing act in the second half of last season, still a highly productive player, in my opinion. Still, if he's not still in that rarefied air among the top 3 to 5 in the league, he's still certainly at the top of his game, one of the top, whatever, 10 to 15 receivers in the NFL, depending on the day. For the Bills to take that cap hit and not get anything in return this year, you think back to the loss to Cincinnati in the playoffs 2 years ago. You think back to the seemingly monthly controversy where Diggs and Josh Allen had to squash some sort of beef, had to say, hey, there's no problem here. We all like playing together. We all like working together. It happened as recently as Tuesday night, late Tuesday night. Stephon Diggs, in response to a very routine Twitter banter comment about whether or not Josh Allen needs Stephon Diggs, Diggs himself responds and says, "Are you sure about that?" Which I have a feeling he already knew that this was in the works, as if to say, hey, you're going to find out really soon just how much Josh Allen does or doesn't need me. Like I said, I'm not going to speculate about how bad it was or what exactly led to this dissolution, but it doesn't seem like the vibes were good in Buffalo. They haven't been for a minute. And for the Bills to pull the trigger on this trade, I think it says a lot. So now we'll see how they pivot. They did sign Curtis Samuel during the free agency period. Khalil Shakir stepped up with a bigger opportunity down the stretch last year. Remember, Buffalo also lost Gabe Davis to Jacksonville. So all of a sudden, it seems like general manager Brandon Beane and the Bills have a lot of work to do. They have the 28th overall pick in this draft. I believe they also picked 60th overall in the second round pick is number 60. So they're going to have an opportunity. They just drafted Dalton Kincaid. James Cook obviously had a breakout year last year. It's not as if this is a completely talent poor offense, but again, Diggs was the engine that made that thing go for so long. I don't know that I want Josh Allen to have to make do without a clear wide receiver number one, and I don't think that's what the Bills have. I can't wait to see what they do. It's a deep receiver class. I think they could get a good receiver at 28, but how much does Brandon Beane trust that? Does he try to trade up and get somebody of a better caliber? Does he try to trade for a veteran? I think you have to keep that in mind. I mean, that's how Stephon Diggs got to Buffalo in the first place. I'm not saying it would be a trade of that caliber, but maybe you could go get somebody else's veteran off of their roster with a draft pick or something. I can't wait to see what they do here, but I do think they're going to have to do something. Josh Allen is the man. I spent a lot of time on the NFL on Fox podcast advocating for him last year. I think he'll be fine, but I would advise the Bills don't sit pat here. I can't wait to see how they address the loss. And then the very exciting aspect of this, the Houston Texans clearly going for it. How fun is it to have a great young quarterback on a rookie contract? CJ Stroud breaks out last year, offensive rookie of the year. His cap hit is just $8 million in 2024. And that's how you wind up saying, yeah, we'll do that deal. We'll go get Stephon Diggs and add him to an offense that already had Nico Collins and Tank Dell, brought back Dalton Schultz in free agency, acquired Joe Mixon. Texans are cooking with a little bit of gas here, and you can do that when you have a cheap young quarterback. You figure the Texans maybe have 2-3 more years before Stroud is on a major extension of his own. I know that sounds crazy, but with what we've seen from CJ already, I think the Texans would be smart to already be bookkeeping for that. So you say, hey, we might have 2, maybe 3 years here where we can really go for it. And Stephon Diggs makes that one of the most fun, well-rounded receiving cores in the entire NFL, puts the Texans that much more in the mix in the AFC. I said, and I got a lot of pushback for this, I said when the season ended that I considered the Texans as taking a step down because they had so many free agent losses, whether it's Jonathan Grenard, whether it was potentially Dalton Schultz, the running back situation. Safe to say they've done a wonderful job of addressing it all. They get Danielle Hunter in there to replace Grenard. They spend some money on some Titans free agents on defense. They're getting Tank Dell back from injury. I already said they brought back Dalton Schultz. And now Stephon Diggs is kind of the cherry on top. Because remember, the Texans no longer have a first-round pick in this upcoming NFL draft. So whatever big swings they were going to have to take were going to come outside of that first round. Safe to say they did it, and safe to say we should take the Houston Texans very seriously as an AFC contender in 2024. That is very exciting. Where the Texans go with Stephon Diggs on the roster and how the Buffalo Bills pivot at the end of their Stephon Diggs era.